You know how every alien species in the galaxy agrees this fruit kills in 3 minutes? Well, one human intern decided to test that theory with his teeth. Dr. Kexel had spent years building a career on deadly flora, but Jake's casual bite shattered every database entry. Now they're rewriting xenobotany textbooks because what was supposed to be lethal turned out to be delicious. You know how most botanical gardens warn you not to touch the plants? Dr. Kexel's greenhouse takes things a few steps further. It warns you not to stand too close, not to breathe too deeply, and definitely not to touch anything without 3 layers of protective gear. His research station sits alone on a remote asteroid, surrounded by vacuum. Because even the local atmosphere isn't trusted near his collection, every plant in there can end a life in under 30 seconds, some much faster. The air hums with containment fields layered so thick you can feel them buzzing in your teeth. Safety protocols aren't just suggestions here. They're the only thing keeping the whole operation from turning into a mass grave. Kexel moves through the aisles with precision, all 4 of his arms working in practiced harmony as he adjusts environmental controls and scans bio-readouts. His translator bracelet flickers constantly, struggling with idioms like better safe than sorry, and coming up with literal but unsettling alternatives. Take specimen XB12, for example. It looks like an innocent flowering vine, but its pollen causes immediate respiratory paralysis, not unlike Earth's oleander, but faster, much faster. Then there's the whispering moss that covers entire walls. It emits a neurotoxin that shuts down motor function, while keeping the victim fully conscious. Kexel knows every death mechanism by heart: vascular collapse, synaptic failure, cellular dissolution. He's the galaxy's foremost expert on how plants can kill you. He built his reputation on this. 3 years of rigorous cataloging, cross-referencing, and confirmation. Every entry in his database is backed by tragic, well-documented fatalities. Prisoners from a dozen species volunteered for testing in exchange for shortened sentences. None of them made it. Kexel's work is cited across xenobotanical journals as the definitive guide to lethal flora. He's proud of that. It's a morbid kind of credential. But his entire system, all those layers of precaution and certainty, are about to encounter something they weren't designed for. Human curiosity doesn't follow protocols. It reads warning signs and thinks, I wonder what that tastes like. It sees a barrier and immediately looks for a way around it. Kexel's world is built on the assumption that all intelligent species share a basic instinct for self-preservation. He's never met a human, so when the airlock hisses and a new intern steps through, the whole greenhouse seems to tense up. The containment fields hum a little louder. The deadly plants seem to lean in. Kexel checks his roster: Jake Morrison, human, temporary research assistant. He adjusts his translator and prepares to go over the safety briefing for the 47th time. He has no idea that everything he knows is about to be turned upside down. So the airlock hisses open and in walks the problem, wearing a grin and a casual disregard for mortality. Jake Morrison stands about a head taller than Kexel, his posture relaxed, his hands tucked into the pockets of his standard-issue intern jacket. Where Kexel moves with the precision of a surgical instrument, Jake has the loose-limbed confidence of someone who's never been seriously hurt and doesn't expect to start now. You can see it in the way he scans the room, not with caution but with interest, like a tourist at a weird museum. Kexel begins the safety briefing with all 4 arms gesturing in synchronized warning. He explains the containment fields, the emergency protocols, the 17 ways you can die before lunch. Jake listens politely, nodding along like he's hearing a mildly interesting podcast. He doesn't take notes. He doesn't ask about survival procedures. Instead, he cranes his neck to look past Kexel at a particularly vibrant and violently toxic, orchid-like specimen. Cultural studies show most sentient species develop a heightened threat response after millennia of evolution. They see danger and their brains scream, run, hide, comply. Humans see danger and their brains whisper, I wonder. It's a neurological quirk, really, a blend of curiosity and optimism that often overrides basic self-preservation. Jake embodies this perfectly. He's not reckless in an aggressive way. He's just interested. When Kexel finishes his lecture, Jake smiles easily. So when do I get some hands-on experience? The translator on Kexel's wrist buzzes, struggling. Hands-on experience doesn't translate well in a place where hands are usually the first thing to go. Kexel rephrases, cautioning against any form of direct contact. Ever. Jake just nods again, still looking around. You can see the gears turning. Then he says it, the line that changes everything. You know, on my planet, the most dangerous things are usually the most delicious. I've never met a danger that wasn't potentially tasty. He says it lightly, like he's making small talk. Kexel stares, all four arms pausing mid-gesture. The translator delivers the sentence cleanly this time, and the meaning hangs in the air between them. It's not a joke. It's a statement of fact, and it signals a fundamental disconnect in how they each see the world. Kexel built his career on the certainty that death is universal. Jake operates on the principle that death is a seasoning. The two perspectives were never going to align. As Jake turns to take in the rest of the greenhouse, his eyes linger on a heavily secured display at the far end of the room. A soft crimson glow pulses from within a layered containment field. It's beautiful in a way that feels like a trap. Jake doesn't look wary. He looks curious. Now picture the most beautiful fruit you've ever seen glowing with an inner light that practically whispers, "Eat me and die." That's specimen X7 Alpha, known across 7 systems as the death fruit. It sits in a multi-layered containment unit at the heart of Kexel's greenhouse, the crown jewel of his deadly collection. The security around it alone could protect a small moon. Everything about this setup screams danger, yet the fruit itself looks like something from a dream. Its skin is deep crimson, almost black at the stem, shifting to vibrant blood red at the base. Golden swirls pattern the surface like delicate filigree, catching the light in a way that makes them seem to move. A soft warm glow pulses from within, rhythmic and slow like a sleeping heart. It doesn't just sit there, it seems to breathe. The visual effect is hypnotic, promising ecstasy and oblivion in equal measure. You find yourself leaning closer even as every survival instinct says to run. Galactic databases listed as the most reliably lethal botanical specimen ever recorded. 3 minutes from ingestion to certain death for any known sentient species. No antidotes, no treatments, no exceptions. The mechanism is brutal. A neurotoxin that triggers complete systemic shutdown while keeping the victim conscious until the final moments. It's the gold standard for universal toxicity, the benchmark against which all other deadly flora are measured. This is classic episematism in nature, the evolution of striking visual signals to warn predators of danger. Earth has its poisoned dart frogs and venomous snakes with bright coloration. The death fruit takes this principle to its ultimate expression. Its beauty isn't accidental. It's the plant's way of saying "I will kill you" in the most visually compelling language possible. The more dangerous something is, the more important it becomes to advertise that fact clearly. Kexel's research shows the death fruit has maintained its perfect fatality record across 73 documented test cases. Zephyrin convicts, Helix war criminals, Beta-7 mammals, all dead within the predicted 3-minute window. Their final moments were meticulously recorded, their physiological responses logged and cross-referenced. The data is consistent, clean, and absolutely damning. This fruit doesn't just kill, it kills with mathematical precision. You can see why it fascinated Jake immediately. While Kexel was explaining the 17 security protocols, Jake's eyes kept drifting toward that soft crimson glow. His posture shifted from polite attention to genuine interest. The death fruit seemed to pull at him. That magnetic attraction humans have toward things they're explicitly told to avoid. Where others saw a death sentence, Jake saw a challenge, a mystery, maybe even a potential snack. The fruit's reputation as the galaxy's most reliable killer made it the perfect test case for human exceptionalism. If anything could kill a human, this should be it. The data was overwhelming, the evidence incontrovertible. Every scientific principle said this should work. That's exactly why Jake couldn't leave it alone. Universal laws were meant to be tested, especially when they came with such an attractive presentation. He started with simple questions at first, casual curiosity masking deeper interest. "So what's the texture like? Is it juicy? Sweet or tart?" Kexel answered each query with increasing alarm, emphasizing the 3-minute mortality rate each time. Jake nodded, but his eyes stayed fixed on the glowing fruit. You could see the gears turning, that human brain already working through the variables. The warnings weren't pushing him away. They were pulling him closer. But you know how humans are with rules, especially rules that seem to exist for other species. Jake started leaning against the containment field like he was window shopping. The humming barrier separated him from the most dangerous fruit in the galaxy by less than an inch. He studied the glowing specimen with the casual interest of someone browsing produce at a market. Kexel watched, all forearms twitching with nervous energy. The contrast couldn't be more stark, one being treating absolute danger as a mild curiosity, the other treating mild curiosity as absolute danger. The questions started small. What's the texture like? Is it soft or firm? Kexel answered mechanically, reciting the established data. Skin contact causes immediate blistering. Internal tissues liquefy within seconds. Jake nodded, then asked about flavor profiles. Sweet or sour? Any bitterness? Kexel's translator stuttered over the word palatable before settling on universally fatal. The exchange felt less like a safety briefing and more like a culinary debate where one side kept bringing up death and the other kept ignoring it. Human history is full of examples where curiosity overrode established danger. Early explorers eating unknown plants despite tribal warnings. Scientists testing unproven chemicals on themselves. Children putting everything in their mouths just to see what happens. It's not recklessness so much as a deep-seated belief that rules are suggestions until proven otherwise. Jake embodied this perfectly. He treated Kexel's 3 years of lethal data as interesting background reading, rather than operational law. The cultural gap widened with each question. Where Kexel saw a perfect record of fatalities, Jake saw a lack of human testing data. Where Kexel saw certain death, Jake saw a potential culinary challenge. The translator struggled with phrases like calculated risk and worth a try. Kexel kept emphasizing the universal lethality across species. Jake kept circling back to preparation methods. Would cooking neutralize the toxins? What about drying or fermenting? Each question made Kexel's arms flutter with increasing alarm. You could see the moment curiosity began outweighing caution. Jake's posture shifted from interested observer to active problem solver. He started pointing at the containment field's control panel, asking about override protocols just hypothetically. Kexel's answers became shorter, more strained. The safety protocols that had always been absolute were becoming negotiating points. Minimum safe distance became recommended viewing range. Certain death became theoretical risk. The tension built not through dramatic music or flashing lights, but through this quiet erosion of certainty. Jake's casual tone never changed, but his questions grew more specific. He asked about serving sizes, about antidote compatibility with human biology, about whether the fruit might pair well with certain spices. Kexel kept glancing at the emergency alarm button, wondering if this constituted an imminent threat. The humming containment field seemed to grow louder, as if sensing the approaching violation of its purpose. Jake's treatment of maximum security botany as a grocery store sampling counter created the core comedic tension. He wasn't trying to be rebellious, he just operated on a different set of assumptions. Rules were for other people. Warnings were for species that died. Humans, in his view, were the exception that proved every rule needed testing. The death fruit wasn't a threat. It was an untested ingredient. Kexel's entire career was built on the premise that some things were too dangerous to question. Jake's entire species was built on questioning everything. Just as Kexel was considering activating the emergency containment protocol, the main airlock hissed open. Commander Vexa stepped through, her rigid posture and sharp eyes scanning the room with military precision. Her arrival should have been the moment order was restored, the moment the human variable was brought under control. But Jake just smiled and turned his attention to her, already forming his next question about culinary applications. Meanwhile, the one person who could enforce the rules arrives, and she's not impressed with the new variable. Commander Vexa steps through the airlock with the practiced efficiency of someone who expects everything to be exactly where it should be. Her uniform is crisp, her posture rigid, and her eyes scan the greenhouse with the kind of attention that misses nothing. They sweep past Kexel's nervous gesturing and Jake's relaxed stance, lingering on the containment fields and security readouts. You can tell she's already running a mental checklist, and the human intern standing where he shouldn't be is item number 1. She begins her monthly safety inspection without preamble, her voice sharp and direct. Report status of specimen X7 Alpha. Containment integrity. Access logs. Kexel answers each query with precise data, his forearms moving in synchronized compliance. But Vex's attention keeps drifting to Jake, who's now examining a do not touch sign with mild interest. Her questions become more pointed. Has the new personnel undergone full threat response training? Are the emergency protocols clear to all present? The subtext is obvious. She doesn't trust variables, especially human-shaped ones. Her interrogation zeroes in on the death fruit's security measures. She demands confirmation of the 3-minute lethality window, the fail-safes, the historical data. Kexel recites the numbers like a prayer, but his confidence wavers when Jake chimes in with, "Has anyone ever tried cooking it first?" Vexa's gaze sharpens. Institutional oversight of dangerous research follows strict protocols because the consequences of failure aren't just personal, they're systemic. One breach could mean losing the station, the research, and everyone on it. The paperwork alone would be catastrophic. Kexel's entire professional standing rests on maintaining this deadly catalog. His reputation, his funding, his place in the xenobotanical community all depend on the absolute reliability of his work. A safety incident now wouldn't just be an accident. It would be a professional indictment. Vexa makes this clear without raising her voice. Medical catastrophes have ended careers, she states, her eyes scanning the containment field around the death fruit. Reputations are fragile things. The warning hangs in the air, heavier than the toxic atmosphere outside. You can see the pressure building in Kexel's posture, where before he was merely anxious about Jake's curiosity, now he's genuinely afraid. This isn't just about a human doing something stupid. It's about his life's work being discredited because of one intern's poor judgment. The stakes shifted from theoretical to institutional the moment Vexa stepped through that airlock. A mistake here wouldn't just mean a death, it would mean professional death, the kind that follows you across star systems. Vexa finishes her inspection with a final warning about compliance and consequences. She doesn't look at Jake when she says it, but the message is clear. The human is a liability, and Kexel is responsible for containing him. As she turns to leave, Kexel's scanner pings. A routine systems check requires his attention in the monitoring station. It's a 30-second walk through a secured corridor. He hesitates, looking from Jake to the death fruit to the departing commander. The professional risk says he should take Jake with him. The practicality says the task will take less than a minute. He makes the choice that seems reasonable at the time. "Do not move from this spot," he tells Jake, all four arms gesturing emphatically. "Do not approach any specimens. Do not touch anything." Jake nods, his expression perfectly sincere. The airlock hisses shut behind Vexa. Kexel hurries toward the monitoring station, his footsteps echoing in the suddenly quiet greenhouse. The humming of the containment field seems louder now, more insistent. Jake watches him go, then turns back to the glowing crimson fruit. 3 minutes and 12 seconds. That's all the time catastrophe needs. So Kexel steps away for what he thinks is a routine task, and that's all the time catastrophe needs. The monitoring panel in the next room shows a minor systems alert, a calibration drift in the atmospheric sensors. It's the kind of thing that happens weekly, fixed with a quick manual override. Kexel estimates 3 minutes and 12 seconds for the entire process. The irony hangs there unacknowledged. 3 minutes to fix a sensor. 3 minutes for the death fruit to kill you. The numbers match with uncomfortable precision. The greenhouse feels different without Kexel's nervous energy filling the space. The humming of the containment field seems louder, more present. The air carries a faint scent of ozone and something sweet underneath like overripe berries. Jake stands exactly where he was told to stand, hands in pockets, doing exactly what he was told not to do. Thinking. His eyes track across the security measures around the death fruit's display. He's not plotting a heist. He's just curious. Human brains are wired to solve puzzles, even pointless ones. The containment field isn't a threat to Jake. It's an interesting engineering problem. He notices the control panel has a manual release for maintenance. It's supposed to be biometric, keyed only to Kexel's handprint. But Jake sees the slight wear pattern on the casing. The way the seal isn't quite flush. He's not trying to break in. He's just examining the workmanship. Opportunity windows in controlled environments aren't always about deliberate action. Sometimes they're about curiosity meeting a loose screw. He leans closer to get a better look at the fruit's golden swirls. The glow seems to pulse in time with his breathing. His elbow brushes against the control panel. It's not a dramatic moment. No forced entry, no hacked systems, just a casual movement, an accidental pressure point. The panel gives a soft click. The containment field flickers once, twice, then drops with a sigh of released energy. The hum cuts out suddenly, leaving silence in its wake. The tragic comedy isn't in a master plan. It's in the sheer ordinariness of the accident. The death fruit sits there, unguarded. No barriers, no warnings. Just 3 feet of empty air between Jake and the galaxy's most reliable killer. The crimson skin seems to drink the light around it, the golden pattern swirling like liquid metal. That soft glow feels warmer now, almost inviting. Jake doesn't reach for it immediately. He just looks, taking in the details he couldn't see through the field. The texture looks smooth but firm, like a ripe persimmon. There's a subtle fragrance now, sweet with a hint of spice. 3 minutes and 12 seconds. The time frame becomes a crucible where human audacity meets lethal biology. Kexel is still in the monitoring station, focused on sensor calibrations. Jake is here, facing a decision that shouldn't be a decision at all. Every database says this ends in death. Every instinct says don't touch. But human curiosity has never been good at listening to databases or instincts. The fruit is right there. The questions are right there. What does it feel like? What does it smell like up close? The gap between wondering and knowing has never been smaller. His hand moves almost without conscious thought. No dramatic reach, no hesitation, just a natural extension of curiosity. Fingers close around the fruit. The skin is warm, almost living. It feels solid but gives slightly under pressure. The scent intensifies, now clearly spicy sweet like cinnamon and plum. He brings it closer to his face, examining the intricate patterns. The glow lights up his features from below, casting odd shadows. He can feel a slight vibration through the skin, like a tiny heartbeat. He doesn't think about the 3-minute rule. He doesn't think about Kexel's warnings or Vex's threats. He thinks about the fact that nobody has ever described what this actually tastes like. All those records, all those fatalities, and not a single tasting note in the entire database. It seems like an oversight. The fruit feels heavy in his hand, dense with potential. The first bite is never a conscious decision. It's just the logical next step in data collection. Now picture Kexel returning to find the containment open and Jake mid-chew, like he's sampling fruit at a market. The botanist steps back into the greenhouse expecting everything to be exactly as he left it. Instead, he sees the humming barrier down, the fruit display unsealed, and the human intern holding the galaxy's deadliest specimen like it's a weekend snack. For a second, Kexel just freezes, all 4 arms suspended in midair. Then reality hits. The containment field is off. The fruit is in Jake's hand. And Jake is actively chewing. The initial confusion gives way to pure horror. Kexel's multiple eyes widen, his skin flushing a panicked shade of blue. He sputters something that doesn't quite translate, a mixture of alarm and disbelief. Jake just smiles around a mouthful of crimson fruit pulp. "Hey, Doc," he says casually, swallowing. The containment field release was sticking. "I was just checking the mechanism." He takes another bite. "Accidentally got some on my fingers. Didn't want to waste it." The casualness of the confession makes it worse. Examining the containment field. Didn't want to waste it. Kexel's brain short-circuits trying to process the disconnect. He starts frantically checking chronometers, his 4 hands moving in different directions. One arm taps his wrist unit. Another activates the bioscanner. A third gestures helplessly at Jake, while the fourth seems to be counting down silently. Toxin response times vary by species, but the death fruit's record is perfect. 3 minutes to complete system failure across all tested life forms. Zephyrins show neurological collapse at 2 minutes 40. Helix species experience vascular shutdown at 2:55. Kexel knows the timetables by heart. His entire career flashes before his eyes, each second ticking toward professional oblivion. The comedy plays out in brutal contrast. Jake stands there cheerfully describing the flavor profile, kinda spicy with a hint of citrus, almost like a really bold ginger, while Kexel panics over bio readouts that should be showing organ failure. Human metabolism handles toxins differently than most species. Our liver enzymes, our digestive processes, even our gut bacteria can break down compounds that prove fatal to others. Jake isn't defying science. He's just operating on a different biochemical operating system, but to Kexel it looks like magic. Or madness. You can see the exact moment Kexel realizes the 3-minute mark has passed. His chronometer hits 3:01, then 3:02. Jake is still standing, still talking, still snacking. The texture's interesting, firm but juicy. "Do you have any idea about the seed distribution? I'm getting a lot of small pits." Kexel's arms slowly lower. The panic doesn't fade so much as transform into utter bewilderment. The experiment galactic science never dared to run is happening right in front of him. conducted by accident by an intern with sticky fingers. This wasn't controlled research. No protocols, no safeguards, no peer review, just human curiosity meeting an open container. The data streams in anyway. Heart rate normal, respiration steady, neural activity showing mild pleasure responses, not distress. Jake finishes the last bite and licks his fingers. You know, with a little sugar, this could be fantastic in a jam. Kexel just stares, all forearms hanging limp at his sides. The 3-minute deadline wasn't just missed, it was obliterated. The clock keeps ticking. 4 minutes, then 5. But the clock keeps ticking past 3 minutes, then 4, and Jake's not just alive, he's giving tasting notes. Every galactic database predicted systemic collapse by now. Complete organ failure within 180 seconds. The timers on Kexel's consoles continue their merciless countdown, each passing second contradicting centuries of established science. Jake stands there casually wiping crimson juice from his chin, while discussing flavor profiles as if he's at a fruit-tasting event, not a biohazard containment zone. Kexel frantically cross-references data streams with all 4 arms working independently. One screen shows the expected physiological cascade, neurological shutdown, cellular breakdown, vascular collapse. Another displays Jake's actual vitals, steady heart rate, normal respiration, even slightly elevated endorphin levels. The botanist keeps muttering about recalibration errors and sensor malfunctions, unable to process what his instruments insist is true. Jake helpfully reports a pleasant tingling sensation spreading through his limbs and a noticeable energy boost. Kinda like a strong espresso, he remarks, flexing his fingers. But fruity. The specific predictions weren't vague, they were meticulously documented. Zephrine test subjects showed complete respiratory paralysis at 2:45. Helix mammals experienced cardiac arrest at 2:55. Every species followed the same pattern. Initial discomfort, rapid physiological decline, termination. The death fruit's toxin was supposed to bind to neural receptors across all known carbon-based life forms. Jake's system should be shutting down in cascading failure right now. Instead, his bio-readouts show improved oxygen uptake and metabolic efficiency. Scientific models tend to collapse when faced with contradictory evidence that can't be explained by measurement error. Kexel's entire framework assumed universal toxicity. The data came from dozens of species across 3 centuries of testing. There were no outliers, no exceptions, no statistical anomalies. Until today, the models never accounted for a species that might metabolize the toxin rather than succumbing to it. They certainly never considered one that might enjoy the experience. The bizarre anomaly plays out in real time on the monitors. Jake's health metrics actually improve slightly after consumption. His stress indicators drop. Cognitive function remains sharp. He even comments that a minor headache he'd had all morning has disappeared. Meanwhile, Kexel's stress levels skyrocket as he watches his life's work unravel second by second. The contrast would be funny if it weren't so professionally devastating. Expected fatality versus actual vitality, displayed side by side on the same screens. You can see the exact moment Kexel accepts that human physiology is defying everything he knows. His arms slow their frantic movement. The panic in his multiple eyes shifts to pure bewilderment. The death fruit's reputation as universal killer wasn't wrong, it was incomplete. It killed every species that had ever been tested. Humans simply hadn't been tested. The 3-minute rule wasn't a law of nature. It was a sampling error. The payoff lands with silent finality. Universal lethality proves to be not so universal when humans are involved. Jake finishes his impromptu tasting session and looks around for somewhere to dispose of the leftover seeds. You know, with a little work, this could be a real energy booster, he suggests. Kexel just stares at the data, watching the clock hit 5 minutes, then 6. The models have broken. The assumptions have crumbled. All that's left is the evidence and one very alive human snacking on what should have killed him. Kexel's training takes over despite the cognitive dissonance. The scientist in him recognizes this isn't a disaster, it's a discovery. He begins methodically recording every detail. Jake's descriptions, the bio readings, the time elapsed. The questions start shifting from, how is this possible, to what does this mean? The data streams in, clean and consistent and utterly contradictory to everything in his databases. He needs to understand why. He needs to trace back through the research history. The answer won't be in the physiological data. It'll be in the methodology. So Kexel dives into the data and finds the fatal assumption. They never tested it on humans. His forehands fly across the consoles, pulling up research histories from 3 centuries of xenobotanical studies. The records stretch across multiple galactic civilizations, each adding their own fatal data points to the death fruit's grim resume. He's not looking for exceptions anymore. He's looking for the original sin in the methodology. The testing subjects roll across the screens in a parade of the condemned. Zephyrin prisoners offered reduced sentences for participation. Helix criminals serving life terms. Beta 7 mammals from failed colony worlds. 73 documented cases all ending the same way. 3 minutes terminal. The data is clean, consistent, and absolutely unanimous. Every species tested died within the predicted timeframe. The conclusion seemed inevitable. Universal lethality. The critical gap wasn't in the data itself but in what wasn't tested. Cross-species toxicity studies assumed that if something killed multiple life forms, it would kill all life forms. They never accounted for biological compatibility, the possibility that a species might have evolved enzymes or metabolic pathways that could break down the toxin. Scientific blind spots form around untested variables all the time. We assume uniformity where none exists because testing everything is impossible, so we extrapolate. And sometimes we extrapolate wrong. The irony hangs there, almost poetic. Centuries of cross-species fatality records, thousands of hours of research, entire careers built on cataloging death. And they missed the one species that would not just survive but possibly enjoy the experience. Humans were the control group that never got tested. The exception that proved the rule was actually an exception to the rule. You can see the realization dawn on Kexel's face. His multiple eyes track across the screens, connecting the dots he never knew were unconnected. Everything he built his career on, the meticulously curated databases, the safety protocols, the reputation as the galaxy's expert on lethal flora, might be fundamentally flawed. Not wrong exactly, just incomplete in a way that changes everything. The foundation of his work wasn't rock solid. It was built on a sampling error. The payoff lands with quiet force. Universal lethality was never universal. It was just the best available data from the species that happened to be testable. The death fruit didn't kill everything. It killed everything that had been tested. The distinction seems small until a human stands there alive after eating it. Science isn't about absolute truths. It's about the best available evidence. And sometimes the best available evidence misses the one data point that changes everything. Kexel sits back, all 4 arms falling still. The humming of the greenhouse system seems louder now. Or maybe he's just noticing it for the first time. His entire scientific foundation hasn't just been shaken, it's been upended. He spent 3 years building a catalog of death based on the assumption that toxicity was cross-species. Now he has to consider that it might be species-specific. The implications ripple outward, touching every entry in his database. He's still processing this when the main airlock hisses open. Commander Vexa steps back into the greenhouse, her inspection complete, but her curiosity apparently not. She takes in the scene. Kexel staring blankly at the screens, Jake casually examining another plant, the open containment field around the death fruit display. Her eyes narrow. She doesn't ask if there's a problem. She asks the question that cuts to the heart of the matter. Doctor, were those fatalities from universal toxicity or species-specific reactions? The timing couldn't be better. Or worse. Meanwhile, the commander returns with exactly the right questions about allergy versus toxicity. Vexa steps back into the greenhouse, expecting to find everything in order. Instead, she sees Kexel staring blankly at his screens, while Jake casually nibbles on what appears to be a glowing purple berry from another display. The containment field around the death fruit remains open, the fruit itself partially consumed. Her eyes scan the scene, the botanist in crisis, the human snacking, the violated security protocols. She doesn't react with anger. She reacts with surgical precision. Her interrogation begins with a single pointed question. Doctor, confirm something for me. Were those fatalities from universal toxicity or species-specific allergic reactions? The distinction seems small but changes everything. Kexel starts reciting the established data about neural toxins and systemic collapse. Vexa cuts him off. I didn't ask how they died. I asked why they died. Is this substance universally toxic? Or did it trigger fatal reactions in specific biologies? The question hangs there, simple and devastating. She's challenging his entire research approach, cataloging what kills without understanding why it kills. Interspecies biology has countless examples of substances that are harmless to some and lethal to others. Peanuts nourish humans but kill others. Chocolate delights one species while poisoning another. The difference between universal toxin and specific allergen isn't just academic. It determines whether something is fundamentally dangerous or situationally dangerous. Vex's military background includes cross-species medical training. She knows that assuming universal toxicity is the lazy approach. The translator struggles to keep pace as Jake continues his impromptu tasting tour. He's moved on to a fern-like plant with silver leaves, plucking one and chewing thoughtfully. This one's interesting, sort of minty with a metallic aftertaste. The database lists it as causing immediate esophageal corrosion. Kexel watches his forearms twitching helplessly. Vex's attention remains fixed on the methodological problem, not the immediate violation. She's not seeing a safety breach. She's seeing a flawed research model. You can see the paradigm shift happening in real time. What looked like a catastrophe, a human consuming lethal flora, becomes instead a dramatic reveal of incomplete science. The commander's questions strip away years of assumption, leaving only the uncomfortable truth. They've been documenting effects without understanding causes. The death fruit didn't kill universally. It killed every species they tested. Those aren't the same thing. The payoff lands with quiet force. Vex's interrogation exposes the need for a completely new approach to xenobotanical research. Instead of asking what does this kill, they should be asking who can survive this and why. The distinction reframes everything. Safety protocols based on universal lethality become safety protocols based on biological compatibility. The entire greenhouse transforms from a museum of death to a laboratory of possibility. Jake seems to understand this instinctively. He's already moving through the aisles, treating previously off-limits specimens like a buffet. This purple berry's actually pretty good, like blueberries with a hint of pepper. The database says it causes instant paralysis. Vexa watches him, then turns back to Kexel. Your research isn't wrong, Doctor. It's incomplete. And it seems we have an ideal testing subject available. She doesn't sound angry. She sounds interested. The crisis isn't a crisis anymore. It's an opportunity. The tasting tour begins in earnest now, no longer accidental but quietly authorized. Jake points at a flowering plant with vibrant orange blossoms. What about this one? The petals look crunchy. Kexel starts to recite the standard warning about respiratory failure, then stops himself. He looks at Vexa, looks at Jake, looks at his screens full of contradicted data. The old answers don't work anymore. He needs new questions. Now Jake's moving through the greenhouse like it's a farmer's market, debunking 3 years of botany with tasting notes. He's not even trying to be dramatic about it. Just walking aisle to aisle, sampling things that were supposed to kill him instantly. The running commentary plays like a food critic reviewing a dangerous restaurant. These purple berries, database says instant paralysis, but they're actually like nature's candy. Sweet with a little kick, he pops another one. Kexel just watches, all forearms hanging limp. The transformation from lethal to edible happens in real time. That bone-dissolving lichen hanging from the ceiling. Jake breaks off a piece. Interesting texture, crispy with a sour finish. Could use some salt. The screaming thorn berries that supposedly cause vocal cord rupture. Surprisingly juicy. Tart like cranberries but sweeter. Each sample contradicts another database entry. The void blossoms that induce existential dread. Vanilla ice cream with a floral note. Really pleasant. Sensory experience often contradicts scientific prediction because science measures effects, not experiences. The data said death. Jake's taste buds say lunch. The comedic effect comes from the sheer mundanity of it all. He's not defying death heroically. He's just snacking his way through a catalog of horrors, treating maximum security botany like a free sample counter. The deadly reputation of the greenhouse doesn't just fade, it evaporates under the weight of casual consumption. You can see Kexel's entire career unraveling with each bite. 3 years of meticulous research, cross-referenced fatalities, painstaking documentation, all being casually disproved by an intern with a snack habit. The tension isn't about danger anymore. It's about cognitive dissonance. How could so much data be so wrong? The answer, of course, is that the data wasn't wrong. It was just incomplete. They tested what would die. They never tested what might live. The payoff lands quietly but completely. Jake's tasting tour turns the catalog of death into a menu of possibilities. What was feared becomes familiar. What was lethal becomes lunch. The entire field of xenobotany shifts in real time from studying how plants kill to discovering how they might nourish. The reputation of the greenhouse transforms from lethal collection to potential food source in the space of 20 minutes. Kexel watches Jake sample a fern that was supposed to cause rapid aging. Kinda peppery with a fresh aftertaste. Would be great in salads. The database entry still flashes warnings about cellular degradation. The contrast couldn't be more stark. One system says death, one human says delicious. The scientific method demands you believe the evidence, not the assumption. The evidence is currently chewing happily. This isn't just about one fruit or one human. It's about reframing entire disciplines. The greenhouse becomes less a museum of death and more a library of culinary potential. Each plant gets reclassified not by its danger but by its compatibility. The screaming thorns become tart berries. The void blossoms become dessert flowers. The bone-dissolving lichen becomes a crispy snack. The transformation isn't magical. It's methodological. Jake finishes his impromptu tour and turns to Kexel. You know, with proper preparation, about 80% of this could be edible. He says it like he's mentioning the weather. Kexel just stares at his screens, then at the plants, then at Jake. The professional implications start to sink in. His life's work isn't ruined. It's just been rendered incomplete. The question becomes what to do with that incompleteness. Double down on the old data or embrace the new evidence? The answer seems obvious when you watch Jake happily sampling another lethal specimen. But obvious answers aren't always easy to accept when they undo years of work. Kexel's reputation, his credentials, his entire professional identity were built on being the expert on deadly flora. Now he has to consider becoming the expert on what doesn't kill humans. The shift isn't just academic. It's personal. But Kexel's watching 3 years of work unravel, muttering about his ruined reputation. He paces the greenhouse, all four arms gesturing at screens full of contradicted data. His life's research, once the definitive guide to lethal flora, now reads like a collection of interesting but incomplete notes. The certainty he built his career on has evaporated. Every database entry, every safety protocol, every published paper suddenly feels fragile. He keeps glancing at the death fruit's empty display case like it's a tombstone for his professional credibility. You can see the despair setting in. His movements become slower, more deliberate. The pride he took in his deadly catalog now feels like a liability. Scientific careers often face these pivotal moments when new evidence challenges established paradigms. Researchers who cling to old models get left behind. Those who adapt become pioneers. The tension isn't just about data, it's about identity. Kexel built his entire professional self around being the expert on what kills. Now he has to consider becoming the expert on what doesn't. Jake breaks the silence with characteristic pragmatism. You know, you could become the galaxy's leading expert on what doesn't kill humans. He says it while sampling a previously off-limits leaf that was supposed to cause instant blindness. There's probably a bigger market for that anyway. The simple statement hangs there, obvious and revolutionary. The crisis isn't a crisis if you reframe it as opportunity. Fear becomes innovation when you change the question from what's dangerous to what's possible. The pragmatic alternative materializes gradually. Instead of studying lethal flora, they could study human-compatible flora. Instead of cataloging death mechanisms, they could document nutritional profiles. The same greenhouse, the same specimens, the same research, just viewed through a different lens. The potential applications stretch far beyond academic interest. Outer colonies struggle with food distribution constantly. Importing Earth crops is expensive and logistically challenging. Local flora often goes unused because everyone assumes it's dangerous. You can see the anticipation building as Kexel considers the scale of the problem they might solve. Millions in remote settlements could benefit from identifying locally available food sources. The research shifts from theoretical to desperately practical. His reputation wouldn't be ruined, it would be transformed. From fearmonger to innovator, from cataloger of death to discoverer of dinner, the crisis becomes an opportunity to do science that actually helps people instead of just warning them. The payoff lands with quiet force. Human-centric xenobotany could transform how the galaxy approaches unknown flora. Instead of automatic fear, there could be cautious curiosity. Instead of isolation and containment, there could be exploration and utilization. Kexel's 3 years of data isn't wasted. It becomes the foundation for something new. The lethal profiles provide important safety baselines. The difference is that now they're starting points rather than endpoints. Jake continues his tasting tour, providing running commentary that reinforces the potential. This root system tastes like ginger. This moss has a umami quality. Each sample adds to the growing evidence that fear might have been limiting progress. Kexel's posture changes gradually. The despair gives way to calculation. The ruined reputation becomes a blank slate. He starts taking notes again, but now they're about flavor profiles and potential uses rather than fatality rates. The transition happens almost without words. Kexel moves to stand beside Jake, all 4 arms now working in coordination with the human's observations. They begin discussing methodology, how to test safely, how to document results, how to categorize findings. The partnership formalizes naturally, born from mutual interest and practical necessity. Kexel provides the botanical expertise. Jake provides the human compatibility testing. Together they could build something more valuable than a catalog of death. So they establish the new roles. Jake as dietary compatibility expert, Kexel as botanical mentor. The negotiation happens naturally, without formal agreements or signed documents. They stand amid the humming containment fields, the air still carrying the faint, sweet, spicy scent of the death fruit. Kexel's 4 hands gesture cautiously as he outlines safety parameters. Jake listens, but now his attention feels collaborative rather than rebellious. They're not debating rules anymore. They're building them. You can see Kexel's concession in how he phrases things. He doesn't say "my research proves" anymore. He says the current data suggests. 3 years of work becomes fragile against new evidence, and he accepts this not as defeat but as progress. Scientific partnerships often work best when different expertise areas complement each other. Kexel brings decades of botanical knowledge. Jake brings human biology and that unique willingness to taste things. Together they cover ground neither could alone. Their agreement forms through practical necessity. Kexel will provide safety insights. Which specimens might be least dangerous to start with? What physiological responses to monitor? How to administer antidotes if needed? Jake will provide biological testing, controlled sampling, detailed sensory notes, and of course the actual consumption. It's not reckless anymore. It's methodological. They'll document everything. Preparation methods, serving sizes, physiological responses. The chaos of accidental discovery becomes structured research. The program they're building stretches beyond academic interest. Identifying edible flora for galactic food security becomes the driving goal. Outer colonies struggle with imported food supplies. Transportation costs skyrocket. Local flora often goes unused because everyone assumes it's dangerous. Their research could change that. Instead of shipping Earth tomatoes to distant worlds, settlers might identify local plants that serve similar purposes. The scalability potential is enormous. Anticipation builds around the ethical benefits. This isn't just about what humans can eat. It's about reducing environmental impact, supporting local ecosystems, and creating sustainable food sources. The logistical advantages become clear too. Emergency rations based on local flora, cultural exchanges through shared food discoveries. The pivot from studying death to discovering dinner shifts from personal interest to galactic utility. The payoff lands with quiet significance. Their partnership formalizes the transformation of fear into innovation. Shared values emerge despite their different backgrounds: curiosity, practicality, and a willingness to question assumptions. Complementary skills create a whole greater than its parts. Kexel's caution balances Jake's boldness. Jake's practicality grounds Kexel's theoretical approach. They stop being scientist and intern and become collaborators. The tasting research expands naturally from that point. What began as accidental snacking becomes systematic exploration. They start with the least dangerous specimens according to Kexel's original data, working their way up cautiously. Each test follows protocols they develop together: small samples, medical monitoring, detailed documentation. The greenhouse transforms from a static collection into an active laboratory. You can see the change in how they move through the space. Kexel no longer flutters nervously when Jake approaches a specimen. Instead, he adjusts scanners and prepares recording equipment. Jake no longer treats the plants like a buffet. He examines them with professional interest, discussing preparation methods with Kexel before sampling. The tension doesn't disappear, but it transforms from fear of disaster to anticipation of discovery. Their collaboration creates a new rhythm in the greenhouse. The humming containment fields now accompany the beep of medical monitors and the scratch of stylus on datapad. The air carries not just ozone and toxic fragrances, but the practical smell of science happening. Questions shift from, will this kill you, to, how can we use this? The answers could feed worlds. Now the tasting lab grows beyond the death fruit into a systematic taxonomy of human-friendly flora. Kexel's greenhouse transforms from a collection of lethal specimens to an active research facility. They start with the plants that showed the lowest toxicity in the original data, working their way up cautiously. The research expands methodically, each test documented with the precision Kexel always valued, just applied to a different question. The careful monitoring becomes a ritual of its own. Medical scanners hum alongside the containment fields, tracking Jake's vitals in real time. Kexel operates them with all four hands, cross-referencing data streams while Jake samples tiny portions. They establish protocols: 1 milligram initial tests, 20-minute observation periods, antidotes prepared and ready. The tension isn't about danger anymore. It's about thoroughness. They're not just tasting, they're testing, documenting, building a new database from the ground up. Take the weeping death moss that was supposed to dissolve flesh on contact. Under controlled conditions, it turns out to have an earthy lettuce-like quality with minimal side effects. The void blossoms that induced existential dread, their vanilla ice cream flavor profile comes through clearly when sampled in quarter-petal portions. Each discovery challenges the existing taxonomic categories. Scientific classification systems often shift when new evidence emerges. What was once grouped by lethality might need regrouping by nutritional value or culinary application. The line between danger and delight blurs with each successful test. Plants that killed other species become potential food sources for humans. The bone-dissolving lichen's sour crunch could work in salads. The screaming thornberry's tartness might make excellent jams. The research isn't reckless anymore, it's calculated, careful, and thoroughly documented. They're not just proving what humans can survive. They're discovering what might actually nourish them. Anticipation builds around the formal safety protocols they develop together. Serving sizes become precisely measured. Preparation methods get carefully recorded. Some toxins break down when heated, others when dried. They document which parts of each plant are safest, which need processing, which should be avoided entirely. The collaboration embraces safety as a shared value rather than a restriction. Kexel's caution blends with Jake's curiosity to create something neither could achieve alone. The payoff lands with practical significance. Their research produces actual guidelines. Never consume more than 5 grams of weeping moss raw. Always blanch screaming thorns before eating. Void blossoms lose their psychoactive properties when baked. The documentation prevents past mistakes while enabling future discovery. What began as an accidental bite becomes a reproducible methodology. The greenhouse's transformation completes from house of horrors to laboratory of possibilities. You can see the shift in how they work together now. Kexel prepares samples with precision, his 4 hands measuring exact portions. Jake provides detailed sensory notes while monitoring his own physiological responses. They've turned snacking into science. The data accumulates steadily, each entry challenging old assumptions and building new understanding. The research could eventually help colonies identify local food sources, reduce dependence on imported supplies, and explore alien ecosystems more safely. Commander Vexa's next inspection finds them deep in this new routine. She watches them work, Kexel operating scanners, Jake tasting a carefully measured portion of silver-leafed fern. The containment fields still hum, but now they protect research rather than just prevent disaster. The airlock hisses as she enters, but nobody panics. The transformation is complete. What was once a liability has become their most promising project. Meanwhile, the commander authorizes the shift from fearing lethal flora to cataloging human nutrition. Vexa steps into the greenhouse for her follow-up inspection and finds them working together. Kexel monitoring bioscanners with all 4 hands, while Jake samples a carefully measured portion of silver-leafed fern. She watches for a full minute before speaking. The containment fields still hum, but now they protect research rather than just prevent disaster. The air carries the scent of ozone and something vaguely herbal. She gives her official endorsement without ceremony. Proceed with the human compatibility research. File your protocols with Central Command by end of cycle. The statement lands with bureaucratic finality. Institutional policies adapt to new scientific discoveries through quiet paperwork, rather than dramatic announcements. Her approval isn't enthusiastic, it's practical. She sees the potential benefits outweighing the remaining risks. The transformation from violation to authorized research happens in one sentence. Then she adds the detail that changes everything. And requisitions some hot sauce from supplies. If you're going to turn my high-security lab into a tasting room, you might as well do it properly. The order serves dual purposes: flavor enhancement and safety precaution. Capsaicin can neutralize certain alkaloids. The practical approach fits her perfectly. She's not just allowing their research, she's improving it. Her recognition of human curiosity as a driver of innovation comes through sideways. Your species' disregard for self-preservation appears to have practical applications after all. She says it while reviewing their new safety protocols on a datapad. The statement isn't complimentary so much as observational. Scientific progress often comes from unlikely sources. Sometimes the variable you try to control becomes the catalyst for change. The new safety protocol becomes official policy. Medical oversight required during all taste tests. Full biomonitoring, antidotes prepared and ready. What began as an accidental bite becomes regulated science. The transformation from perilous hobby to cooperative research completes with the commander's signature on the authorization form. The paperwork matters. It means funding, resources, institutional support. Their project shifts from rogue experiment to sanctioned program. The payoff lands with quiet significance. The policy evolution embodies the theme perfectly. Interspecies collaboration turning dangerous knowledge into shared prosperity. Fear becomes curiosity. Lethal flora becomes potential food sources. The commander's approval isn't about friendship or trust. It's about results. She sees the data, recognizes the potential, and adjusts policy accordingly. The system works when it adapts. She leaves them with one final directive. I expect monthly reports on nutritional findings. Focus on caloric density and vitamin content. The shift from toxicity to nutrition completes with that sentence. The greenhouse's purpose transforms completely. Nobody mentions the death fruit incident anymore. It's become the foundation for something new rather than a mistake to be punished. The airlock hisses shut behind her. Kexel and Jake look at each other, then at the newly authorized research setup. The hot sauce requisition form blinks on the main console. The absurdity of it all hangs there for a moment. Maximum security botany becoming a culinary research station by official order. They don't laugh. They just get back to work. The tasting lab operates with new legitimacy now. The beep of medical monitors mixes with the hum of containment fields. Jake prepares another sample while Kexel adjusts the scanners. The collaboration feels natural now, almost routine. But this isn't just about taste testing, it's about solving real problems in the outer colonies. While Jake and Kexel sample silver-leafed fern and peppery moss, millions of settlers on distant worlds struggle with food imports that cost too much and arrive too late. The research shifts from academic curiosity to urgent necessity. Galactic food security isn't a theoretical problem. It's a daily challenge for communities living on the edge of habitable space, where every shipment from Earth requires fuel, time, and credits most don't have. The scale of the opportunity becomes clear as their data accumulates. They're not just identifying quirky snacks. They're cataloging potential staple crops, vitamin-rich supplements, even medicinal plants that could support entire settlements. A previously ignored fern might provide essential nutrients lacking in imported grains. A berry considered lethal could prevent scurvy. The shift from fearing local flora to utilizing it changes everything for colonies operating on tight margins. You go from struggling to survive to thriving locally. The logistical challenges are significant but not insurmountable. Identifying human-compatible plants is just the first step. Testing them requires careful protocols, something Kexel and Jake are now perfecting. Distribution means creating guides other colonies can use, with clear instructions on identification, preparation, and serving sizes. They're building a database that could be accessed from any terminal in settled space. The knowledge scales in ways physical shipments never could. Food distribution in isolated communities follows brutal economics. Transporting calories across light years costs more than producing them locally, if local production were possible. Space colonies often rely on hydroponics and recycled nutrition. But these systems fail. Having backup options, native plants that can be foraged or cultivated, changes survival calculus. It's the difference between waiting for rescue and sustaining yourself. The ethical benefits stack up quietly. Using local flora reduces environmental impact from imported species that can disrupt ecosystems. It encourages settlers to learn about their new homes rather than trying to recreate Earth in miniature. There's dignity in adapting to a world rather than forcing the world to adapt to you. The research shifts from human-centric to ecosystem-aware, which is better for everyone long-term. Anticipation builds around the potential for culinary diplomacy. Food has always brought species together. Sharing meals builds trust. Sharing recipes builds culture. If humans can safely eat local flora, they can participate more fully in regional customs and trade. A berry that's deadly to others becomes a human delicacy. That creates economic opportunities alongside nutritional ones. Exchange becomes possible where before there was only caution. The payoff lands with practical force. Their research pivots from academic curiosity to solution for galactic-scale problems. The tasting lab isn't a side project anymore. It's a prototype for how other stations could operate. Kexel's greenhouse becomes a model for turning fear into utility. The shift feels inevitable in retrospect. Why study only what kills when you could study what sustains? You can see the personal implications dawning on both of them. Jake's casual curiosity has become professional purpose. Kexel's defensive caution has transformed into proactive discovery. They're not just saving careers anymore. They're potentially saving lives. The weight of that responsibility changes how they work. The jokes about hot sauce and flavor profiles continue, but underneath lies serious commitment. The transition to their personal transformation happens naturally. They pause between tests, looking at the screens full of new data. The scale of what they're building sinks in. This isn't about publishing papers or impressing commanders. It's about enabling survival on worlds where every calorie counts. The work matters in a way that transcends academic achievement. It becomes humanitarian. Now Kexel's recognizing that his career is saved not by doubling down on danger but by embracing collaboration. You can see the shift in how he moves through the greenhouse, less rigid precision, more thoughtful observation. His four hands still gesture when he talks, but now they invite discussion rather than deliver warnings. The transformation isn't dramatic. It's in the small things. How he asks Jake's opinion on classification systems, how he defers to human sensory experience, how he accepts that his 3 years of lethal data were valuable but incomplete. His personal journey from certainty to humbled openness plays out in real time. The botanist who once recited fatality statistics like gospel now questions his own assumptions routinely. Scientific certainty is a comfortable place to stand until evidence pulls the floor out from under you. Kexel watched his life's work get upended by a single human bite and chose adaptation over defiance. That takes a particular kind of professional courage, the willingness to be wrong publicly and keep moving forward. The acceptance lands quietly but completely. 3 years of lethal lore weren't wasted. They just needed contextualizing. The deaths were real. The data was accurate. The conclusion was simply incomplete. Human physiology became the variable that changed the equation. Kexel's shift into the new discipline of human phytopharmacology and nutrition feels natural in retrospect. He's still studying plants and their effects on biological systems. He's just focusing on nourishment rather than fatality. Scientists adapt when fundamental assumptions prove wrong by either rejecting the new evidence or incorporating it. The great paradigm shifts in research history all followed this pattern, old models collapsing under the weight of better data. Kexel chooses incorporation. His expertise in toxicology becomes the foundation for understanding nutritional compatibility. He knows what to avoid because he documented what kills. That knowledge becomes valuable in reverse. Jake's optimistic commitment to responsible exploration provides the perfect counterbalance. His request for formal hot sauce protocol sums up the new approach, enthusiasm tempered by methodology. The condiment isn't just about flavor. It's about acknowledging that even safe exploration requires structure. Their collaboration works because they've found middle ground between reckless curiosity and rigid caution. Anticipation builds around the ongoing adventures this discovery enables. The greenhouse is just the beginning. Their research could expand to other stations, other ecosystems, other previously off-limits environments. Human curiosity paired with alien expertise becomes a powerful combination for exploration Each discovery opens new questions, new possibilities, new directions for research. The galaxy feels suddenly larger and more accessible. The payoff lands with gentle significance. The humbling arc offers a natural hook for further episodes where human curiosity redefines the galaxy. What other assumptions might be incomplete? What other universal truths might be species-specific? The partnership between careful science and bold exploration creates endless storytelling potential. One accidental bite leads to systemic change, and that change creates ripples across disciplines. You can see the professional redemption taking shape. Kexel's reputation transforms from expert on deadly plants to pioneer in interspecies nutrition. The crisis that threatened his career actually saved it by forcing evolution. The ongoing work promises more than academic papers. It offers practical solutions to real problems. The personal satisfaction shows in how he now moves through the space, no longer just preventing disaster but enabling discovery. The transition to concluding thoughts happens organically. They're preparing another round of tests, discussing serving sizes and preparation methods. The air hums with containment fields and medical monitors. Jake measures out a sample while Kexel adjusts the scanners. The collaboration feels effortless now, almost natural. The greenhouse has become exactly what it was meant to be, a place of learning rather than fear. So the galaxy's most lethal fruit became a lesson in human exceptionalism. Where others see certain death, we see potential lunch. The real safety protocol might be keeping humans away from your dangerous specimens unless you want centuries of science rewritten over a snack. Maybe the most hazardous thing out there isn't what's known to kill you, but what remains untasted, untested, unexplored. After all, curiosity didn't just challenge the rules, it redrew the map. And somewhere in a high-security greenhouse, two researchers are still sampling, still discovering, still turning fear into dinner, one bite at a time.